Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast presented by DraftKings. Very happy to be joined by Detroit Pistons beat reporter from ClutchPoints.com, Eric Vincent. Eric, internet issues in 2024, man. Like, what the fuck? But hey, man, we're here.
I'm writing a letter to the manager of Xfinity now, I promise. I'm sorry for keeping y'all, but I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
It's all good, man. Like last week, I had internet issues. This week, no, it happens at the end of the day. But I just kind of want to get straight into it. To this, I gave fans a couple of hours to kind of just digest that loss because there's a lot we can get into. But I wanted to kind of get your take because I know you were down there. Like overall, what did you think of this game tonight?
Yeah, man. I got to start off. Everybody at LCA, it's been a lot of great energy in that building so far. Fans have really been bringing it. It's been a lot of support. Everybody's been, excited for a new fresh start this season. Just wish they could have, capped it off with a great win. A lot of good back and forth. I tweeted this. It kind of felt like a 0-4 Pistons game where there was a lot of defense, a lot of stops, a lot of like black and blue type bruiser basketball. And it really came down to who was going to get hot at the end. And unfortunately, the Pistons made a lot of mistakes. They couldn't, clean up the glass. It really felt like they missed Jalen Duren today. They allowed 17 offensive rebounds to the Rockets. And then Tari Eason just killed them in that second half. Like they couldn't stop him on the glass. They couldn't stop him with scoring. He made a lot of good plays defensively. He was the X factor that turned a lot. And like they really struggled offensively as well as a team, really outside of Cade Cunningham. So, it was an intense game. Wish they could have wrapped it up with a W. Another close one. It seems like they've had this constant battle against close games they've had to finish with the last few seconds. So, they're going to have to learn to be better for it as the season goes on. So it's going to be another growing pain for them to get through.
Yeah, the past 3 games, I'm telling you, man, this team's taking years off my life. But I'd rather be at the edge of my seat than have 20, 30-point blowouts. The fact that they're competing, I feel like the Knicks game was the only game that like really got away from them. And we're 11 games into the season, so 10 out of 11 games they've been in it down the stretch. I thought just first quarter, Houston's rebounding, I thought was going to be a problem the entire night. It seemed like we just could not contain a defensive rebound. If we did get a rebound, we couldn't hold on to the ball. And I thought that was a really big point of why they did lose the game. That and the turnovers again, which I think it's just kind of a theme this season, is not taking care of the basketball at the end of the day. Oh, yeah. But I think overall it was a really good game. I really wanted us to just beat the Rockets because you know how their fans get. Like, I'm cool with some Rockets Twitter guys, but man, they talk just like wildly disrespectful.
They got a lot of ammo today too. I'm not gonna mention what happened. I'm sure they've been tweeting about it enough, so I ain't gonna add that shade on. But it was a tough one. It was a game with a lot of energy that both teams didn't want to lose. I mean, they're both kind of in terms of roster construction, they have a lot of similarities. Young foundation pieces with the veterans that they want to try to help build around. They kind of kept a lot of them at bay. I mean, Fred VanVleet didn't have the best game. But then again, Ivy and a lot of other Pistons kind of struggled too. And I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace on that because Ivy's been playing out of his mind for 10 straight games. He was due for a stinker sooner or later. So I'm not, going to freak out too much on the one bad game that he did put forth. And then they were able to catch a little bit of fire at the end. Malik Beasley made some huge shots in the second half. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a big and one. Beef Stew did a really good job. I really wish Paul Reed could have stayed, in the game. He fouled out in the fourth quarter. Şengün, who's a flopper to me. I'm not. Oh. I like his game, but the flopping, the traveling that he got away with, it was a lot of stuff that kind of got on my nerves. But he did a good job of putting pressure on the bigs and helping the Rockets close out that game. Again, they had opportunities to steal it away, but this is something that they're definitely going to have to take back to the drawing board.
I know you had mentioned like the veterans because they were down 13 at one point of the game, and Malik Beasley hit a 3, Tim Hardaway Jr. hit a 3, and then the and 1. It was weird because like when I was watching on TV, Cade had the and 1, but they took back-to-back timeouts, and you never saw him on TV like shoot a free throw. So I don't know if he shot the free throw and missed it or what happened. But there's so much progress with this team, because if that was last year's team and they were down 11, they probably would have lost the game. I think that happened twice. In the first quarter, they were down 11-2. JB calls a timeout and they get back into the game. So the fight and the will that they're showing this season, I think, is clear progress to like what we had to, cover and watch. As I know you're a beat reporter over at Clutch Points, and me doing this podcast, the fans watching, like, the product is so much better in 11 games. And the fact that we're kind of like in that like playoff play-in picture so far early on, I'll give it 11 games, but it's good to see them make, strides in the right direction so far.
100%. I talked to JB Biggerstaff a lot, when I can, post-game, pre-game, and just knowing how dialed in he is to these kind of details, it's just a night and day difference. I tweeted it yesterday because I was interested about what fans thought. If you had to give him a grade for what he's done over the first 10 games, a lot of high grades for him, a lot of A's, a lot of B pluses, a lot of A minuses. I gave him an A minus, and based on what he said today, it kind of spoke to the same things that, I was worried about, or at least wanted to address with him. So he would talk about things like, look, we're not always concerned about wins and losses. We want to just start with building the foundation, taking the right growing steps, and then the results are going to come how they did. And I mean, even to an extent, that's kind of what happened today. They had a lot of good open shots. They did a lot of good things defensively, but unfortunately, Houston was maybe just a tad quicker to get the ball, or they were able to capitalize on the next possession and scoring where the Pistons didn't. So they had opportunities, and it shows that they are, again, at least taking the steps to, make the right basketball plays. Like, there was a lot of plays early in the first half and maybe some of the third quarter. We look at, they played a lot of one-on-one basketball. When the ball started moving a lot more, when you were able to find guys open in the corner, find, Beasley flaring over for a jumper, that's when they're playing at their best instead of being stagnant. And considering the scenario that they've had to go through, where they've had big leads and they've had to learn to get it back. They've had big leads and had to protect it against teams like the Sixers. They've been down big and had to come back against teams like the Celtics or the Pacers, or even the Cavaliers. Like, there have been a lot of different scenarios, and you're seeing that kind of play a big factor in how they go and how they, maneuver through these late game situations. So even through these just 10 or now 11 games, it's been a big sample size of the learning and the development that we're seeing. And I think JB Biggerstaff deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled it with this young franchise.
Yeah, I was having conversations with some people. I was like, if JB gets the Pistons to 30 wins, his name will be in Coach of the Year considerations, given what happened. But given what happened last year, I mean, having a team that only went 14 games, I mean, I think they just won their fourth game of the season. Last game, and they didn't have their fourth win of the season until January.
Right.
And I know tonight's game isn't what Pistons fans wanted to see, another heartbreaker. Down the stretch, there was a couple possessions where, to your point, Jaden Ivey has had, 10 solid games. I thought tonight there were instances where it felt like he was forcing things a little bit. I don't know, maybe you saw the same thing, where he was trying to, force some like really wild, crazy like layups. Like, if they go in, great, it's a highlight reel play, but I'm sure he'll probably watch the film with the coaches and break down of like how he can be better and how he can not do that in maybe the next game he has, because I'm really expecting him to come out against the Miami Heat and be really aggressive and kind of shake that bad game off.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham as well. The backcourt definitely were going through some moments where they would miss a shot and then they would try to get it back, or they would turn it over here and they would try to get it back and make it up in the next possession. Cade, after that technical foul, like the very next possession, he just drove the ball full court and tried to get a layup, and he missed it. So yeah, they were very forceful on a lot of things where they normally haven't been. Normally, obviously, when they're clicking and things are, working well for them, it's easy to say, oh, well, they're doing a good job of spreading the ball and not forcing things. But now, when the shot is off a little bit and, defense is a little bit tighter, especially against the talent that, Houston has with Dylan Brooks and Amen Thompson, who did a really good job defensively, Tari Eason as well. They have some really good defensive wings. So when things get a little tighter and a little more difficult, you have to show that you're able to adjust. And unfortunately, they did a lot of forcing, and they missed way too many free throws. This has been a problem all season. And it's supposed to be like, if you were the bigs who were doing it, it maybe not be a bit of a problem, but it's Cade and Ivy that are missing the majority of them. And then Tobias as well, with the last one set that he had. Like, those are not the guys that should be missing free throws on this team. Those are the ones you should be able to lean on, and they should be hovering around 80 like they have been through the majority of their career. So, yeah, that was a little disappointing, but I'm sure JB is going to get in their ear about it soon.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something, because when sometimes I look at the stats and I'm looking at Ivy, I'm like 72%. That's really low for Jaden Ivey, because he's around like 75, 78 throughout his career so far in the NBA. Tobias has always been a pretty consistent free throw shooter. Same with Cade. I mean, I think Cade almost shot almost 90%. He was like around the 87, 88% range. But yeah, I think that's a big thing, not hitting your free throws. I mean, Tobias had a chance to tie the game, misses the first one. The fact that they got a rebound on forced at the free throw line twice to try to get them in the game. The fact that they got the ball twice, man, I was just like, there's no way they're getting the ball back again. And they almost tied it and scored again. The fact that they did that, I mean, like, shout out to them for trying to hustle on the offensive glass. But overall, this game was a heartbreaker, tough pill to swallow, but they're going to have to, lock in, because you have an in-season tournament game against the Miami Heat on Tuesday.
Yeah, and a little bit of the good news for them is they're not playing the murderous road, first 20 games. That's the only pushback, and not pushback, but maybe grace I try to give Monty Williams from last season. The league schedule that they gave them was just unbelievably ridiculous. Now, at the very least, they're not sitting up here playing contenders only for the first 25 games and whatnot. So, looking at Miami, Milwaukee, Toronto, Washington, Chicago, Charlotte, Orlando, who's still hurt. They have a pretty soft November to get through. So, knowing what they started off with against teams like Indiana, against teams like Boston, the undefeated Cavaliers, that should help you in games like these. And that's not to say that you should take those teams lightly. You should always be, as dialed in no matter who's on your schedule. But knowing that it's not, as crazy as it was last season, I think should lean them a little bit more assistance in their development. So, hopefully they'll be able to take advantage, of these next several games coming up.
Yeah, that the first like 6 games were just brutal. The fact that they came out like 4-6 in their first 10, like realistically, they could be 5-5 if they would have boxed out in Charlotte. Like, if we're being honest, a lot of people during the summer, I'm sure I had you on during the summer when we were talking about the schedule, like, a lot of people are saying they might win a game. They might win 2 if they're lucky. The fact that they won 4 kind of shows you what JB said in the press conference this summer. He's actually doing it on the court. It's not just, PR talk out of his mouth, that like what we kind of were getting from like Monty and Troy, in previous years. Like, he's actually locking in defensively. Like, the Pistons are like one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, but they're one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA. So that's why these games are so damn close. But first 11 games of the season, I've been very pleased, and I kind of wanted to transition into the backcourt. I wanted to get like your take on it, because you have been probably one of the most vocal people in the Detroit Pistons community and on the beat about Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham and the fit. So I do want to give you kudos to that. You're one of the very few beat writers that has been a believer in Ivey, been a believer in Cade. What have you liked about this backcourt so far this season, and maybe some dislikes?
To be honest, I don't have a whole lot of dislikes at this moment. I mean, they're kind of overachieving, like at a higher rate than I thought they would. I thought it would maybe take them a little bit of time to kind of get used to playing under JB Bickerstaff's system, but I love everything that I'm seeing from these two right now. I really do. I think knowing that they play different styles makes it easier to me for them to mesh together. And that's what I was saying all off season. Like, if you have a JB Bickerstaff who's able to make it work with 2 undersized guards who kind of play similar styles, you should have a little bit of an easier task with guys like Cade and Jaden Ivey, just based on talent. I'm not basing it on what they've been through, in terms of their career, but based on how they play, man, I'm loving how they're be able to, fit together right now, whether it's Cade who can bring the ball up court, Ivey, whether he's hot, he can bring it up court, and they run a lot of motion to put them in the right spots instead of just letting them play one-on-one basketball, which I think they did a lot of today. But outside of today, we've seen Cade, play off ball, and he's playing on the block, and Ivey will go try to find him. The community of the Pistons who believes that Cade is not a point guard, I don't understand y'all, because outside of the numbers alone, it don't even have to be about Cade. The part that I love about Ivy's game so much, which highlights my reasoning of letting him be the point guard, is Jaden Ivey is so good at cutting off ball and giving Cade that assistance that he needs when he's getting that extra attention. There was a play where I think Stu, it was against the Lakers, where he, flashes up to the free throw line, and I think Anthony Davis or Austin Reeves like kind of hedges over a little bit, and Ivy immediately jets to the hoop and gets an easy dunk. Like, those are the benefits that you have, and that's the brilliant coaching that JB Bickerstaff has exuded by saying, okay, he's quick. We're going to use him like this. We're going to, use him in transition to make sure he's taking advantage of that athleticism. So I just feel like to me, Cade being the best passer on the team, even with his turnovers, I feel like it just makes so much sense to leave him as the point guard, and they've done a good enough job to, even if it's Cade not being the leading scorer, there's going to be nights where Ivy is between 20, 25 points, and Cade maybe is giving you 17, 18 points, but 10 assists on top of that. You can win with that formula. So as long as you're getting, assistance from the veterans around them and they're knocking down open shots, I think that duo is going to be just fine. I think they kind of have already established that they can play together. We just need to see if they can win long-term together at this point.
Yeah, I thought a lot of the conversations that a lot of Pistons fans in the community have had is, well, they haven't won together, but to your point, the way Dwayne Casey, obviously they only played 12 games together in Dwayne Casey's final year.
Right.
The way Monty Williams used Jaden Ivey, that was just a clown show last year. It's a complete difference. Like, you didn't really see Jaden Ivey in motion type offenses. You didn't see him coming off screens, coming up DHO screens with Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren or Paul Reed for that matter. The fact that he moves without the basketball, tries to get into plays that maybe he's not a part of, like, I believe it was last game against the Hawks in the fourth quarter, and someone had missed a shot, and he's all the way at the 3-point line, and he comes in and gets a tip back.
Yep.
Like, you didn't see that last year with Jaden Ivey. He's making himself available, and I think that's why it's worked a lot with these two. And it also helps. His shooting, I think, needs to be talked about more. He's one of the better shooters on this team, along with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. Like, if you told me Jaden Ivey was going to shoot 40% from three, the first 10 or so games in the season, I'd be like, oh, okay, so he's taking, that step in development. I think that's been the biggest kind of mark against them so far is Jaden Ivey needs to be a consistent shooter, and then this backcourt can work. But I think even if he's, around, 36, 37%, and he's, in that kind of like motion type offense, I think this backcourt can work. And you have some decisions to make this summer if you want to extend him, because he is extension eligible. And, outside of tonight, it was his only bad game so far this season, in my opinion. First 10 games, I would be more than happy to extend and lock up this backcourt for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, JB should be very encouraged from what he's seen. Also, on top of, I think, two other areas where I think they've shown where, they're truly thriving with one another, and it kind of hones in on the issues that Ivey's been having as well. He draws contact better than anybody else on this roster, and the refs give him his whistle too. It's not like where it's Cade and he's got to argue and fight and preach for it. They give it to Ivey. So when he's getting to the line as often as anybody else on that roster, he's got to be hovering around 80%. He cannot be shooting around, sub 70s and whatnot. So when you have him in these motion offenses, or if you have him pushing, the ball in transition and getting, if not a dunk or a layup, he's at least getting to the foul line. That's 2 easy points right there. And that's the kind of pressure that we didn't see from him last season. And it also goes to speak on, we talked about this during media day as well. 3 coaches in 3 seasons for a young player like him, and even Jalen Duren, that's not anything to take lightly. Even for Cade Cunningham's situation, like, having 3 coaches in the short amount of time that they've had in their career is not easy to adjust to, especially considering, like you just said, the styles are completely different. Casey was kind of just letting them, figure it out. Hey, go out there. We'll see what we can do. Monty was supposed to put in the 0.5 offense, which to me is still non-existent at this point. JB is the only one that's really putting some actual details and assignments together with his offenses, and what's showing right now. They also deserve a lot of credit. Both of them deserve a lot of credit defensively for what they've been doing. Ivy has been, people like called him on social media a cone for a long time, giving him a lot of pushback. And there was a lot of worry about Cade, having to be one of the primary defenders. So with Asar out, I think he's been fantastic. His numbers have shown it. And Ivy has shown that he can be productive as well, playing in passing lanes and opening up transition opportunities as well. So, yeah, I don't have any question on them right now. I think today was one of those question days because, hey, when the shot's not going, what are y'all going to do? And I think that's the next step for them to figure it out on the way to the winning path.
Yeah, I do agree with you. When I was talking with Blake Silverman and Wes Davenport on their podcast, The Pin Down, they were kind of like digging into the analytics, which I don't really dive into the numbers too much, but they told me that Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey averaged 38 deflections per game. And that's pretty high. That's pretty high for a backcourt that a lot of people labeled as non-defensive.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the game against the Hawks was Jaden Ivey's best defensive effort in a Detroit Pistons uniform. Like I was telling people, it reminds me of like 2016 Detroit KCP, like the way he was just fighting, competing. That's what it reminded me of, like watching him, because some of the blocks he had, I don't know if you got to go back and watch, man. Like he blocked. I don't know who he blocked, but man, he was definitely cussing after the block. Like he was up for it. But overall, I've been really pleased with this backcourt. But I think Organic Lindo makes a really good comment about Jaden Ivey in terms of like Jaden needs to learn that he just can't out athlete on certain defenders, which I think with time he'll understand that you can't just use your speed and athleticism. You gotta have to outsmart them and outquick them and learn to use your speed, when to use it and when not to use it. And I think there have been games this year where he's learned how to do that, but I think tonight it just maybe he got in his head a little bit. But overall, I've been really pleased with him.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the next steps of his development in defensive sets, especially where, like you said, against the Hawks, they weren't just, putting him in the corner to, watch for the spot up shooters. He was on Trae Young for a good portion of that game. And that's not an easy assignment for anybody, for a guy that likes foul baiting, a guy that can shoot. He has a very crafty handle. Trae, again, a lot of players on social media begin to slander. Trae Young's a damn good basketball player, and all these narratives around some of these guys just got to stop. So, yeah, Ivy's got to work on that on the offense and defensive end. I think he's done a good job offensively of channeling his speed, knowing when to slow down, knowing when to accelerate. He did a good job of that against the Sixers. Did a good job against, I think it was the Lakers. Like, he's done a really good job of adjusting with that. Defensively is the next task because he's been getting in foul trouble a lot lately. So, that's going to be something to pay attention to. And it's definitely something he's been working on with JB as well. So, again, those steps are there. The help and assistance has been there from the vets, the coaching staff. It should come together hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I think it will too. The future is bright for this backcourt. Obviously tonight isn't something that you go back and watch the game and we're talking about them like playing good. People are going to think we're crazy, but it was one bad game like out of this backcourt. Like the first like 10 or so games have been pretty solid. Absolutely. I wanted to kind of focus into improvements. So obviously this is still a very young team. They're 4-7 in 11 games. What areas do you think they could improve on this season?
I think a lot of attention right now is on the turnovers. I don't think that their turnovers have been really bad. And I mean, that's kind of just normal for a young team. It's normal for young ball handlers, and even for older ball handlers. We're seeing superstars that are been in the league forever. Like Ja Morant was top 5 in turnovers. James Harden leads the league in turnovers. Like it's just a thing. It's normal. But the problem is the timing of it. The timing of the turnovers, the timing of the missed free throws. It's kind of why people have given so much pushback and argument to what Cade has done in the fourth quarter if he's not scoring. So it's not a problem to me if he doesn't score in the fourth quarter. But if you push that alongside with, if you push that along with, defensive lapses or missing free throws in the fourth quarter, and missing every field goal you take, all that lumped together is a bit of a problem. So to me, I think turnovers and just basically this timing of a lot of things need to kind of go together a little bit better because, again, mistakes are going to happen. You're going to be able to kind of deal with the ebbs and flows of a game, but it feels like a lot of their mistakes are coming in the late possessions where they need to be as crisp as possible. Like you can't be missing free throws down the stretch against teams that are prepared and war ready for these kind of moments. Like you have to be able to know the differences in situational basketball. So to me, free throws, turnovers, and just understanding situational basketball, I think those three areas right now are going to serve them better than, to me, any other areas that they're struggling in right now.
Yeah, when we had this question submitted by the fans, I thought turnovers would be your answer. I think my answer would be rebounding lately. The past two games, I think it's really apparent. And obviously, Jalen Duren is out. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the podcast. But I think rebounding right now, especially, defensive rebounding, I think what was really apparent. And obviously, the Rockets are one of the best offensive rebounding are not just offensive, but rebounding teams in the NBA. And you saw it tonight. I think they had 54 to our, I think we had like 44, 45. But I thought rebounding, obviously you rebound the basketball, you take control of the game. Turnovers, I feel like in spurts, they take good care of the basketball, but then they kind of, it's situational turnovers where they're trying to force something that's not there instead of focusing on plan A, what's plan B, what's plan C, or even what's plan D. Sometimes when you watch, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, the way they're just looking for maybe an Isaiah Stewart and they get fixated on that and they don't look to, you got a wide open Malik Beasley in the opposite corner. Stuff like that, I think they will get better at as the season goes on. I think the turnovers for the most part, Eric, I think they're fixable. I think they're just forced turnovers, not getting the ball out of Cade's hands when he is double and triple team. And I think Cade did a really good job of that in the Hawks game where they went to try to double him and it was already out of his hands. But I think overall, I think most fans would probably really, pinpoint on turnovers and rebounding the basketball as of late.
Yeah, shout out to my guy, Sean Murphy. We sat together at the game today, and we talked about the turnovers. And a big issue that Ivy and Cade had in this game, especially late, that they've been doing a lot basically all season, are jump passes without a plan. Sean said that immediately. That is the most critical way to blow a lead and swing momentum. They will dribble the ball in the middle of the lane, and then they'll be in there and maybe they wanted to shoot or maybe they had an idea what they were going to do, and they jump in the air and they're waiting for something to do, and then they're stuck. Like it's way too much of that basketball that's been going on between them. And I agree with you. I think that absolutely is fixable with better motion, better understanding of your spacing. And I think it's going to help when Jalen Duren comes back as well. I think they really miss him offensively. I don't think he's been as productive as a screener as Beef Stew has been, but they miss having that vertical lob threat. Like there have been some plays where I think Cade has done a good job of, feeding Stew in the post or dropping, easy rolling passes to him, but they're missing that lob threat that kind of gives a little bit more balance, for all of them. I think it would help for the vets as well. Again, it kind of all just goes along with the bit of the time that they've been working with, and they just kind of got to find a little bit better, range in terms of consistency in, providing those spots, because, they might do a good job of rebounding in the first half, but in that second half, when things get a little tighter, that's when they start making those kind of mistakes. So again, just kind of understanding situational basketball from that standpoint, I think is going to help them a lot more. Hopefully if they'll have the advantage of playing with a lead instead of having to chase it from behind, which has been a problem for them lately.
Yeah, the Hawks game being up 24, and then it's like a back and forth game. Like I thought in the first quarter, I was like, okay, they just dropped 40 on them. I mean, Luka dropped 70 on them. Their defense isn't that good. It's kind of suspect, but then they got back into the game, and Dyson Daniels just like he's probably going to be in like defensive player of the year conversations if he keeps up what he's doing. Like 7 steals is absolutely like bonkers. Like I was like, I checked the box score, it was like 17 steals in the last 3 games. That's insane. Like, holy crap. It's like Tony Allen first team all defense type shit. Like holy crap, man. But what's it?
No, I was gonna say, so like even when Cade hit that left-handed floater over him, like, bro, there's no shame in that. That's a hell of a shot that he just hit over you. You were right there in position, and you had help side defense behind you. That's the classic good defense, better offense scenarios. Yeah, he's fantastic. I like watching him play with the Hawks.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You talk about G League Ignite guys, and like there's some like dogs defensively, like in the G League Ignite. Like
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I was like, Kaminga's pretty good, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Green, even though Pistons fans don't like Jalen Green. Like it's kind of wild to me that they just decided to close the G League Ignite because they've produced like a lot of NBA talent in a short amount of time that the program was open. But I did want to transition to Isaiah Stewart, and this is a question that I don't really have an answer for. Maybe you do because you're around the team more than I am. So Isaiah Stewart, we saw shoot a lot of threes last year, high volume and like career highs. So why do you think this season he's not shooting as many 3-point shots?
I just think they have more options instead of him. I don't mind him being a target in terms of 3-point shooting, but I don't think it needs to be a priority necessarily. I understand why people would have wanted him to maybe be spread out more, but based on how his game is, he's just better as a bruiser and like a scrappy player. I don't look at him as a priority piece that they need to be relying on for when shots aren't falling. If Tobias Harris isn't knocking down threes, but Beef Stew is, I don't look at that as like a good solve for them because I don't think that's a long-term fix for them to have to, be able to lean back on. So, they said they wanted to look at Stu as more of a center. They made some adjustments with him where he was doing a lot of crashing into the lane, which kind of clogged some space. But from what I'm seeing, I mean, the way defenses play him, and it even goes back to last season, if that's the guy, they're looking at like, oh, that's the guy you want to shoot? Cool, we'll live with that. We know he ain't going to beat us. So, like, I understand people maybe wanting to see a bit more volume, but I don't think that should really be a part of their game plan anyway. You brought Beasley in for a reason. You brought Tim Hardaway in for a reason. And they're setting screens just like Stu is too, but they're flaring out and moving off the screens in a different way. Tobias the same exact way. I just think they have better offensive versatility where they don't have to necessarily lean on him for that. I just don't think, granted, he was good last year. I like the improvements that he made, but I think people are overvaluing that just a little bit. Like, he's not the priority of your offensive package of, oh, if we find him open, that means we did something good. I mean, not necessarily. You want those other 4 guys to be the focal point of your offense. So, like, I understand the concern, but I just don't think that's really his game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do agree. Even if I'm not saying like he needs to shoot like 8 threes a game, but maybe if he attempted like maybe 2-3 a game, do some instead of like solely running DHOs, maybe do some pick and pops once in a while just to kind of confuse opposing defenses. I think it's there. We've seen him attempt a couple 3-point shots, but I went back and listened to his media day comments, and it kind of feels like he'd rather be down low in the post, just, crashing the glass, getting rebounds, just kind of playing bully ball, if you will. But I know that's a question a lot of fans have had because he was such a high volume 3-point shooter, but maybe that's because he was playing a bulk of his minutes last year at power forward and Jalen Duren was center, and now he's playing center, so he doesn't have those same kind of opportunities. But
yeah,
I'm not really mad at it, but I can understand why fans are like really confused by him not shooting the 3-point shots that he was shooting last year.
I am so confused with the evolution of his game, though, because if anybody remembers back to his rookie year, he had like a little bag where he could get to the mid-range and like get a shot off, find a little bit of creation to get to the hoop. Like he wasn't lost offensively in his rookie season, but we just talked about it with the coaches and different philosophies and kind of going through all those changes. I feel like he's just kind of been pushed around in a lot of different areas where he hasn't really been able to hone in on really any true offensive skills. It's outside of screening and rebounding. I mean, he's done a good job of, being the cleanup guy when they need it. He does a good job of creating some extra chance opportunities on the offensive end. But outside of that, I don't think he's really gotten a good, shake in terms of what he can develop. Like they haven't been able to say, okay, we're going to work on you here shooting these mid-rangers or, give it to you on the block to see if you can, put something together. Like he just hasn't had that, especially going back to last year when they used him primarily as that spot-up shooter off of screen. So it's clear he's not that stretch forward that they tried to use him as either. So I don't know. He's kind of in a confusing area, especially when Duren does come back. I feel like in even with Paul Reed playing well too, I don't think Paul Reed's a guy you can leave on the bench. He gives you too much offensively. He shows effort defensively. I would like to see more minutes for him. So, Stu's in a tough spot. I'm with you. I do understand some of the concerns. I'm just kind of confused in what direction they go in to solve it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's something because a lot of people were they saw all the the high volume threes and shooting 38% from three. I think is a big accomplishment. They were expecting him to play more 5-out, have the Pistons be a 5-out offense, and you see a lot of teams do that in the modern NBA, like the Celtics, OKC, New York, who waxed us. You saw that in full effect with Karl Anthony Towns. Which I think, I wouldn't be opposed to him maybe shooting 2 or 3 a game. Maybe you kind of experiment in that way, but I'm not like pounding my fist on the table for him to shoot the amount of threes that he shot last year because I just don't think it's needed personally. But did want to touch on it for just a little bit.
Yeah, I understand.
I know you had mentioned Jalen Duren, and he did get a really weird injury this week in Charlotte. And it was another ankle injury. So my question to you would be should fans be concerned about Duren's ankle injuries?
Yeah. I don't see how you can't be. You, I think, put up the number. I think they put it on the broadcast. 40-plus games missed due to the ankle specifically. It's not like it's, he's injured, on everything. Like, that would be a different conversation. But specifically the ankles, like, yeah, that's a problem because not only is it, it's something that's going to impact, hopefully not, but it's something that could impact how he plays his game. He's a guy that plays above the rim. He's explosive with his athleticism. And if he can't rely on his ankles and his health to keep that going, especially when he's not just, a rim runner, but he's also a guy that's had a lot of time where he's had to, switch out on the perimeter, guarding guys like Anthony Davis, guarding guys like, Karl Anthony Towns. He had a tough time against an Al Horford, but just like the point is, if he's dealing with that kind of responsibility and you can't rely on the health to stay up, yeah, that's absolutely a problem. That's something to be a little bit worried about. I'm hoping the coaching staff will find a way to maybe, find best ways to prevent it. It kind of seemed like it was a bit of a freak injury against Charlotte. So, you can't really predict that, but you can prepare for it the best way you can with maybe different shoes and high tops, tape his ankles. I'm not sure what they can do, but it's definitely something to be concerned about. I wouldn't take this lightly at all with the number of games that he's missed and with how important he is to this team. Like, I wouldn't kick the bucket on him yet. I think he's very important. I think he has great synergy with the guards in the backcourt, and I'm hoping they find a way to keep him on the court as much as possible.
Yeah, I know last season he had several ankle injuries, and then he is wearing some supportive braces on his ankles. I do want to mention that because some fans are thinking that he's not wearing any ankle braces. He is. If you kind of like look at some NBA photographers that get a close up look at his ankles, he is wearing like these black braces around his ankles. He also really loves Kevin Durant shoes, which I like KD shoes too, but I don't know. Maybe you get him high tops. Maybe you just have him play in some freaking Chuck Taylors. I don't know. Something or some Timberlands. I don't know. Something that like he get that Steph Curry ankle support because Steph dealt with a lot of those ankle injuries too. But yeah, like that last injury, like no one even really touched him. He just kind of landed awkwardly, and it's something like when you talk about centers, like if you talk about ankle injuries and they've had a lot like he's had, I noticed just spring in his step. Like it wasn't the same like last season when he went off against Chicago and when he came back after that first ankle injury he had last season, he wasn't really the same. He wasn't really trying to contest shots. And that's what it got me thinking. I was like, oh, maybe he's not trying to protect the rim because he doesn't want to roll his ankle again because he's rolled his ankle so much early on in his career. But I hope he can, stack games where he's not rolling his ankle because sprained ankles, man, they can be a bench. Once you sprain your ankle, you sprain it. It seems like every other time you're just like trying to play basketball or setting a screen. I know you've played, basketball like high school. I don't know if you've ever played collegiately, but like once you roll your ankle or sprain your ankle, it feels like it just happens like every other game.
Yeah, and it's hard to not have that in the back of your head as well. Again, that's 40 plus games is nothing to shoo away. That's a problem. That is absolutely something they got to look at. And I've seen a lot of pushback in the comments about how he's being used, but I mean, that's his role. He is the guy that, they use in the dunker spot. He's a guy that they use as a lob threat. And I don't think, honestly, his role to me doesn't have to expand that much. If he's an elite level defender, an elite level rebounder, that's honestly to me as good as you need for this team. I think they have two good post up players in Cade and Tobias that kind of offset his need to be a back to the basket guy to put some kind of offensive package together. So like I don't want to have to add that onto him, especially while you're trying to nurse, his injuries with his ankles and whatnot. So yeah. I don't think they should hopefully change too much of him, but we're hoping that like you said, it definitely changed a lot last season. The first few games, I remember them, the Chicago game, the Charlotte game early. He was fantastic in those spots. So the Miami game as well to open the season, he was really, really good. So yeah, hopefully this doesn't, become a trend. It kind of already is at this point, but yeah, something else is going to have to do with, how they use him in terms of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I know you got some people in the comments right now saying like you could replace his a player like him because he so far in his early NBA career, his rim protection and his defense has been inconsistent, but you see flashes of it sometimes. I think I made a graphic earlier today, like Isaiah Stewart's like top 3 in rim protection, only behind Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, and he's the shortest player on that list at 6'8". So crazy. I mean, if Duren could protect the rim and make effort like Isaiah Stewart is, I think a lot of fans, especially in the comments right now, probably wouldn't have any questions about his future on this team. But then you have the ankle injuries that kind of go into that. And then it seems like it takes him a couple of weeks to get back into, game shape, basketball shape. And it's just the whole process of, him being sidelined and rolling his ankles in these games.
It is, especially when foul troubles continue to be a problem for him as well. I think he's fouled out maybe once or twice, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's going to have to do a lot of adjusting for that. Again, I wouldn't necessarily, pull the plug on him yet. I don't think he's an easy guy to just replace. Again, I do think he still has value. He's still one of the best rebounders in basketball, I think, when he's locked in. And again, the flashes have been there. He hasn't been just a lost cause, defending on the perimeter or protecting the rim, against guys who drive as a help side defender. Like he's shown the ability to do that. And I feel like when you have guys like Asar come back, hopefully, I think that's going to make his job a lot easier. When he gets to be paired up, maybe next to probably not because Stewart's been spending more time as a center, but if there are more lineups where he's not looked at as the sole protector of, the defensive end, he'll have a little bit more easier responsibilities. But I feel like it's been a lot put on his plate. He definitely hasn't been playing as well as he should be. But again, back to the question, yeah, hopefully the ankles are not going to be much of a deterrent in terms of his development.
Yeah. Again, he's another player that is his rookie contract is extension eligible at the end of the summer, along with Jaden Ivey. So Pistons could just not extend him and just, have his rookie contract expire going into next season. But that is something that I think a lot of fans should be paying attention to if they're not already. You got 2 core guys that could get paid this summer. It's very possible. You're going to have to wait and see like what Trajan Langdon in the front office does decide with these guys. I mean, I'm not getting into trade talks right now, you guys. I mean, we're in November and you guys are already giving me trade machine stuff. You can tell basketball season's back. I got a 15-team trade this morning. Not even lying.
Jesus Christ. Come on, man. And like you just said, they're winning somewhat. We're seeing some progress. We're getting some questions answered. If anybody's in trade mode or draft mode right now, just kick the bucket on the season. Don't watch. We'll let you know how it goes on social media. There's plenty more that you can focus on outside of more rebuilding questions. They're 11 games in. Let it breathe. Let JB work his magic because it's already kind of showing thus far. Just let it keep cooking.
When we won in Philly, one of the first comments I got on Instagram, it said, "We're ruining our Cooper Flag sweepstakes." And I'm like, bro,
oh my goodness.
Are we like, you've watched the past 4 years. One time the Pistons got the first pick. They've been shafted 3 straight years. You think we're going to get the first overall pick? Like, it's if I had to guess, I think Utah gets the first pick. That's just me, the way they're playing. I know they have a bunch of young pieces that is extended Lauri Markkanen, and like I think Utah gets the first pick personally. Watch it be Philly, and then OKC gets it because it's top 6 protected. That would just be such a.
I can imagine right now.
That would just be such a OKC thing to do.
Yes.
I have one more question for you. This is kind of fun one. Another fan question that was submitted, and it was: are any veteran players this season, like in terms of like surprising you, like which veteran has surprised you the most? I guess
the veteran that surprised me the most, I would say Tobias Harris, in a good and a bad way to an extent. I feel like when he's on, you see how valuable and how much different this team is, because again, he's giving you a different level of production in terms of being a guy that they can rely on in the post-up game. You know, he gives a bit of a different dynamic where he can bring the ball up, he can create his own shot. And he's been playing pretty good defensively. I've never really known Tobias Harris to be much of a defender, but he's very active. He does very well in passing lanes. He got a couple good strips earlier today, and I think he did a good job against the Hawks as well. He's been pretty solid as a defender right now. So I'm definitely surprised in that. I'm surprised with how cold his shooting has been, for sure. Like, I don't know who got voodoo on him with corner threes, but that needs to change immediately. You talking about they could be, 5 and 6 or whatever right now. If they just maybe make a couple more stops, they could easily be better than that if he knocks down a couple of those corner threes. Just a few. Like, it's just little things like that you brought him in for. And you see the guys rally around him too. I spent a lot of time seeing how much his influence matters to them. JB Biggerstaff said he's like that big brother figure to the guys in the locker room. When he's heating up, they want to play for him. He does a good job of bringing guys to the sideline and talking to them about spots and talking about things that they need to do. And he did a really good job of keeping Cade's head cool after that technical foul that he got earlier too. So major credit to Trajan Langdon, because, obviously Tobias was a big laughing joke on social media when he got signed here, but I think he's been a big plus, and not in terms of his shooting, but other aspects as well. The off-court chemistry with the team, being able to give them a different dimension, scoring offensively, and his defensive efforts as well. I think all deserve a lot of credit for what he's done so far.
Yeah, I think Tobias has been definitely a bright spot. Mine is Malik Beasley, and it's for a different reason. Like, I went to the home opener, and him and Ryan were talking so much crap to Benedict Mathurin. Like, the whole crowd loved it.
Yeah.
Last game against the Hawks, he had a deflection and he was like clapping his hands, and the whole crowd got into it. And the type of leader that he is, like, you see him talking to the guys on the bench when he's not playing. You see him kind of take Ron Holland and Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey under his wing, the way he's kind of interacted with the Detroit Pistons fans since he's gotten here. I think it's such a breath of fresh air, kind of given like the vets that we had last year. Like, no shot at Alec Burks or Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, they weren't really veterans that were willing to, spend extra time to help these guys get better. Like, they just seemed like vets were like, I'm going to give you 15, 16. If we win the game, cool. If not, hey, not really my problem. I'm not babysitting you guys right now. Like, I'm trying to get my next NBA job somewhere else, probably. Like, all these vets, Tim Hardaway Jr., he's just been on a heater. Maybe it's because he's playing back in Michigan. Tobias Harris, I don't expect him to have games where he's not shooting the 3-point shot at a pretty decent clip. I think he's just kind of struggling right now. I know a lot of people wanted to get on his ass for tonight's game, which I don't really think it was his fault. Did he miss a free throw? Sure, but he wasn't solely to blame for tonight's loss. I think there was a lot of different issues of why they lost the game, and it's been the same issues: turnovers, rebounds, and just kind of questionable shots in the fourth quarter. But I really like what I'm seeing out of Malik Beasley, and who knows, maybe they decide to re-sign him after this year's over.
I wouldn't rule that out at all either. Going back to the veterans and even the other pieces that they've had, they're like Bojan and even Alec Burks. They were guys who were good offensively sometimes, but terrible defensively. At the very least, and I'm not saying that Beasley's some lockdown defender. or Tim Hardaway Jr. or Tobias, but they have given better effort than any other vets they've had up to this point. They give you better versatility, and like you said, they care about the development of this team. They're also healthy and able to be around and more relatable than a guy like Bojan. Like even simple things like I give credit to Beasley for, when he was in the locker room with Cade, anybody saw on the Pistons social media, takes the game ball, gives it to him. Hey, you've been through a lot, man. We appreciate you, respect the work you've been doing. This is for you. Or even them having like a bond on social media. Like those little things do matter. JB talks about it a lot too. Like Tobias has said, like, yo, I cared even outside of basketball. I've told these guys how to spend your money, like how to move on a day-to-day basis as a professional. Those little nuances don't get talked about enough. People keep it strictly to the basketball court. Those other outside things matter a lot. We saw it from as soon as Summer League when Tobias was sitting with the young guys watching the game. So it shows that they are invested in not just what, their next step in as a professional, but how they can help bring winning back with this young foundation that's set in place right now.
I thought it was really important. I saw it on Twitter, and I can't remember who had posted it because they were at the Hawks game. And Beasley made sure to hold on to the basketball while Cade was getting an interview with Johnny Kane.
Yeah.
And he had the basketball with him and immediately gave it to him. And mind you, that was Beasley's best game as a Detroit Piston. He had 22 points, and he gave Cade the ball. And I think that just kind of shows volume of the type of veteran that he is. Cade had 3 straight triple doubles this week. The fact that he's kind of deferring to Cade and say, hey man, this is your franchise. I'm just here to lead you and be a veteran that you can lean on, during tough times, or maybe you're playing a little bit out of control. I can kind of calm you down in that way. They didn't really have that last year. And you had a coach last year that kind of just had a front row seat. I'm not coaching if you ask me. Like sometimes you just look confused out there. It's like, it didn't work. Okay, let's try it again. But honestly, man, I love the addition of Beasley, and a lot of people that are subscribed to this podcast, they know that I was really saying we should go get Malik Beasley if the Bucks aren't going to go get him. Like him and Gary Trent were my 2 guys that I kind of circled in. I was like, those are 2 guys that could come in and really impact perimeter shooting and just leadership. And I'm happy that he kind of took a hometown discount, if you ask me, because $6 million for the type of shooter that he is, I think is kind of gone under the radar around the NBA so far.
Yeah, these are the kind of veterans that they needed. Like there was a lot of talk about adding guys like Malik Monk to this team, and those kind of players take away from the development of a guy like Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. They understand what their roles are. They understand how they can help, and they're executing that to the best of their ability right now. Again, they've been a little hot and cold in some spots, but they're lending as much assistance as they can in the areas that the Pistons need the most. And it's starting to reflect with the players too. Like when you see the vets being able to talk to the young guys, and in the next quarter, Cade is bold enough to tell Tim Hardaway, hey, we needed this possession here, and this is what went wrong. Like that kind of stuff has been translating in terms of how they approach the game and what their maturity level is, even as a young team. So, yeah, again, I'm really happy with what Trajan Langdon did. It was a lot of question marks around it, but those who kind of understand the development of this team and in terms of what they needed, outside of maybe another backup veteran point guard, I think he did a great job of getting everything that this team needed in order to, finally start heading into a winning direction.
Yeah, man. I did not have Tim Hardaway Jr. shooting close to 50% from 3 the first 10 or so games.
No way.
So many Dallas fans told me that he was washed. Pistons fans wow, we just traded for another Joe Harris. And I think if Tim Hardaway plays all next week in every single game, I think he will match the games that Joe Harris played in last season, which kind of tells you we're 4 or 5 weeks into the season, and right. he's already going to match the games that Joe Harris played in, and Joe Harris just retired. He's like, I'm done. This ankle injury is too much. But yeah, man, I've been really impressed with all the vets, and even a guy like Fontecchio that doesn't really get kind of looped into the vets. I think some people forget that he's 27, 28 years old, and he's a vet that they can lean on as well.
Definitely. Again, they have a good core guys that have been doing a whole lot. Another name that you could have mentioned was the guy that they traded Tim Hardaway for. Quentin Grimes ain't doing nothing in Dallas right now. He's not playing good basketball. And Tim Hardaway's come in and giving you a lot of assistance offensively, even when he's being asked to switch on defense too. Like I remember spots where he had to guard like Kevin Durant and, be in areas where he's guarding guys that are bigger than him. Just being a vet, he kind of understands, ways to defend without fouling and trying to slow down possessions or at least slow down runs. So yeah, he's been a very, very big shock. If anyone had him as a pick, I would totally understand because they both, or all three of them to me, have done a good job collectively of, hammering in spots where the Pistons have needed them.
I think what makes the Hardaway trade 10 times sweeter, and people that are NBA draft fans will probably like this. Your Detroit Pistons own the Toronto Raptors second round pick.
True.
And it's going to be probably a very early second round pick because the Raptors don't look good. They're fun to watch, but they don't know how to win basketball games. They're kind of like I don't know if you would call it rebuilding. It's kind of like a retooling, like what they got with the OG Anunoby, but it's just like they have guys that are probably could be on a playoff team. But I mean, the Raptors are still really young, but yeah, I've been really happy just with the direction so far with this team. And I know we've talked several times like during the summer about the direction and what this team could possibly be. But if you would have told me they're 4-7 in the first 11 games, I'd be like, okay, progress. And I couldn't be happier with the way they're playing.
Yeah, these games easily could have just been beatdowns. If you would have said, hey, the undefeated Cavs are in town, or you're going over to see them, like, what do you think the score is going to be? And the fact that they were able to play tight and Cade put up great numbers and Ivy showed good flashes. And, like, there's a lot of things that have shown that this team is not dead in the water. Again, even this early this season, you could argue it's already eclipsed what happened last season. So, yeah, there's a lot of good things going on. I think at this point now, like you just said, we don't know where the vets are going to be long-term at this point. But I think it's given Trajan Langdon an idea of, okay, this works here. This works well with Cade. Ivy does good in this spot with these kind of guys around him. Fontecchio helps Duren or Cade or Ivy do this. Like, I think he has that idea. He's been in every single game. He seems really active with the team, and I have a lot of faith that he's going to keep this ship going the right way.
Yeah, same here. I don't want to keep you on too long because the Lions are playing, and I'm sure you want to go watch that game. Apparently, Jared Goff's first pass I don't know if it was an interception, but someone earlier in the chat says Goff's first pass was terrible. But do you have anything to plug or promote? I know you do cover the Detroit Pistons for ClutchPoints.com. Any articles that you maybe want to tell the fans that are watching right now?
Yeah, man. I'm gonna get a quick recap on the game. It should be up online hopefully within the next couple of hours. Be sure to check it out on ClutchPoints.com. Find it on my social media as well. I'm also gonna be doing some of the most encouraging signs of JB Bickerstaff's coaching that he's done in this short amount of time thus far. So I'm really excited to put that together. It just feels good to be able to talk about a winning direction with this team and the positives that we're seeing thus far. And hopefully you can put it into the writing as well. So if you guys get a chance to check it out, follow me on social media at I am Eric Vincent. I would appreciate all your support. And thank you for having me here, man. I really do appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate it. I feel like I have to have you on once a month just to catch up because I have such a good time like talking with you. And it's always so much fun. And we always kind of go down rabbit holes every podcast. And I absolutely love that. But your Twitter, and I think I have your Instagram too. If people want to follow you on Instagram and Twitter, it should be a link in the description below. So you guys can just click it. You can follow Eric, support him. Does a really good job of covering the Detroit Pistons. I think it's your first year on the beat too, isn't it?
My first full season. Yeah. Last year I did like maybe 20 some games with Clutch. Now this is my first full season being able to be at each home game and cover some of the practices as well. It's been a fun experience, man. I have a lot of good time, meeting the fans, seeing people out in the street at LCA. So yeah, it's been a great start so far. I'm really enjoying myself.
Hey man, you're bringing the good luck.
I'm trying.
But if you guys want to follow Eric, again, links are in the description below. We'll see you guys next week, and hopefully the Lions get a victory tonight. Peace, you guys.